Hey everybody, happy Saturday night. Today is April 12th, 2025. This is the Across the Pitch post-game show. I am Mike Barrera. I'm joined today by Dave Miller. Jose Nunez is at City Field covering the match, as well as Jillian Todd and Kyle, who are frequent guests of our show. They're all up in Queens. Ow, I just bit my tongue. That's kind of how the night went tonight, Dave. Just little things happened that just ruined the whole night. As I recover here from that, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I mean, not too bad. It's frustrating that the result tonight. But yeah, I mean, it's good to be back here doing on the post game show. I've been able to do the last couple. So yeah, it's good to get back. Unfortunately, we're discussing a loss, but yeah, good to be back.
Discussing a loss as well as for you and I, Dave, is our first time to discuss the Daniel Gazdag departure as he was sent to Columbus Crew just a couple days ago, and a Columbus Crew side looks very dangerous compared to a Philadelphia Union side that has really kind of gone south compared to the hot start that they had to the season. So overall tonight we had a 1-0 loss as mentioned. What were your initial thoughts on the lineup considering the absences we have? Daniel Gazdag, the clear absence. Andre Blake was also out. And Andrew Rick was in net tonight as well. Kai Wagner, however, did come back to the lineup. So what were your thoughts on the lineup and maybe let's say the first half of that game?
Well, I mean, I was shocked, but a bit surprised to see Andre Blake wasn't fit. But I mean, Rick had a good performance early in the season when he filled in. But again, I think we discussed it last year. And we'll get on to it with the goal and the experience, and you can argue would it have happened with Andre Blake, where we'll discuss it in a bit, but
Sure.
it gets to a point where it's happened the last season and a half, where again he's one of the best goalkeepers in the MLS, but at a point, if he's constantly injured every other game, you're going 2-3 games without Andre Blake here, 2-3 games without him there, you're thinking, could that money be a better resource maybe? I think that was my first thought. It's just again, like, if he can't stay fit, it gets to a point where and you're restricted to you're constricted to what you can do roster wise. Is it worth the money having a goalkeeper that you're only going to get for half the season? Albeit, yes, he's one of the best goalkeepers in the league, but it gets to a point you look at it and go, could that money be better invested elsewhere for a goalkeeper who you're going to get from game one to game whenever he's going to play every single game? I can accept international duty, that's fine, but when we discussed it last year, and it's happened again this season already. Like he's missed a game where due to a little knock where he can't go. Like
Mm-hmm.
it gets to a point where you've seen the last season and a half, and it's then transpired again into this season, where it just gets you just. And who knows? I might be fit for the next game. I might be overreacting, but just you look at the goal that was conceded tonight, and you think a more experienced goalkeeper doesn't make that mistake for the goal, and Andre Blake definitely does not make that mistake for the goal. But again, it's the case of we saw a lot of subpar goalkeeping last year that cost the team
Yep.
in important moments where they could have made the playoffs and they lost goals and they conceded poor goals from goalkeeping mistakes, whatever. Without Andre Blake in the team, we think if Andre Blake was there, if he was fit, they win that game, they draw that game, they don't concede that goal. This doesn't happen. But then you look at it and go, well, he's injured and he's been injured for the last 4 games, but then he plays 2 games and he's out for 3 games. You're thinking, yeah, I don't know.
No, I think it's a Colin joins us tonight. Mikey B, what's up? We jumping off the bridge yet? Colin, always good to see you, brother. I don't know if we're jumping off the bridge yet, but the move with Dano Gazlog and then, of course, Andre Blake being out and tonight's 1-0 loss, an uninspiring match overall from the Philadelphia Union, certainly has fans uh, questioning, how far can this team really go? But Dave, I think you make a pretty good point, and I think an honest conversation that all of us as fans have to have. We have had a conversation on the show for what I think 2 years now. What is the Union's plan moving away from Alejandro Bedoya? How are they going to kind of phase him out? And we've seen now Carnell's approach compared to last year with Curtin. Bedoya is going to be a sub, probably see 25 minutes or so a game, which is fine. We've all agreed that that's probably the best role. Fine. I think there has to be a conversation with what is the next step for Andre Blake because to your point, Dave, it's happening so often that he's missing games that you're truly you're truly hurting your season. Even just 4 or 5 matches can really make a difference between whether you're a top 5 team or fighting for the playoff spot. And we saw that last year. We saw a really promising start from Oliver Semle. We thought, okay, here we go. Ernst Standard found himself a little diamond in the rough goalkeeper. We're still waiting for Andrew Rick to mature and obviously get more experience on the MLS roster. But that has quickly gone south. I still love Rick. I think he is the goalkeeper of the future. Maybe in a couple of years he'll be 100% ready to go. But Oliver Semle was supposed to kind of be the bridge in between that, and he was supposed to be a noticeable upgrade from Joe Bendick, who we saw was not the answer
Yeah,
behind Andre Blake.
job
Now
ending. Yeah,
Oliver Semle can't even see the field over an 18-year-old goalkeeper, a 19-year-old, however old Rick is now. Um, and it's concerning. And does there need to be a legitimate backup goaltender now behind Andre Blake, where even if he does miss a couple matches, you have somebody in there that's very reliable. And what like at the same time though, look what happened to Matt Freese. So at what point does a goalkeeper not want to be here anymore because he's constantly behind Andre Blake? Then you see Matt Freese tonight and you think, man, that guy was on our squad and he's playing pretty consistent football. And we kind of and he went off to New York City. He's helping a direct opponent in our conference, the same way Daniel Gozlak is going to be helping the Columbus Crew for the
yeah,
foreseeable future. So I think there needs to be a conversation about Andre Blake's longevity and reliability because availability is sometimes the most important asset for any
yeah.
player. But enough with Andre Blake right now. I'm going to bring up a couple comments right here. Joe Oblick says, my reaction from tonight's game, it was a piss poor performance by the club tonight. Why Rick trying to be a superhero and gave up the goal? I don't know. Joe, I think maybe partially because the back line was pretty poor. I think he's kind of an aggressive goaltender, just probably from an age standpoint, right? He's a young kid, wants to go out and make a big play. It happens. Young mistakes happen sometimes. So I'm not too upset by that he's trying to make a play, but you also kind of have to read the room, and it was not the right time to do that thing, especially when your team hasn't played
No.
well all night. Um, Philly Rovers joins us. What are we doing before this transfer window ends? Where is the reinvestment? May is going to be tough. Again, a conversation that we're going to continue to talk about tonight. I think that's a great point. What is the plan for this coming season right now, before the window, during the window, and for the rest of the season? Dave, let's talk about this back line of Makania, Glesnes, Wagner, and Harriel. What were your thoughts on that back line tonight?
I was shocked that Westfield didn't start the game, but I mean, uh, yeah, I just well, it was sort of the expected back line. Obviously, with Glivinovic being out injured,
Yep.
Makanya was obviously going to step up. But I perhaps thought Westfield may have started, but I mean, road game. Nate Howard's got the experience. He's been there. He's done it. I don't blame him for that. But I think the biggest concern for me was just how easy and how often they got in behind down the left hand side. How overexposed the left hand side was, and especially in that first half. The amount of times the ball came down that left hand side, and you know, for chances they had, to get low crosses in the box and have shots at goal. Like, hey, Kai Wagner was nowhere to be seen, and I think I said it one of the earlier games this season as well. It was a point. It was something I definitely noticed last season at points was just how frail they looked defensively on that left hand
Yep.
side. Like Kai, great going forward, great. Like, I think one of the crosses he put in during the second half, I think Brewer who headed over, great cross in the box. Attacking side of the game is fantastic, but defensively, like he's out of position so often.
Yeah.
And even for the goal, like okay, I think it obviously came. I think it came from a corner, didn't it? Obviously, Ewan had a corner, and sort of the NYCFC dealt with it in the game. Sort of what's the word? Sort of it sort of balanced itself back out. So NYCFC had obviously readjusted into where they needed to be formation wise, whereas the Union, Lukic was essentially playing left wing back. There was no left back. You only had one centre half, and you had your right back, and that was it. I mean, just that pretty much summed up the back line. Was the fact you had Glesner was essentially walking back instead of
Yeah.
chasing back to get in position. Harry also had to come over to cover. Macanya's been left up. Macanya's then had to push up a bit because he's not sure if because he's not sure whether their right back's going long or he's going to go short and
Mhm.
play the ball in, whatever. Which then, of course, with the way the Union play, if he's going to go for the short ball, they're obviously going to push up. They're going to press. They obviously went long. The Union misread the situation, and yeah, it was just I think the goal pretty much summed up the performance of the back line tonight and how overexposed, especially on the left hand side they were. I know perhaps you guys weren't as impressed with Nate Harrell's performance tonight, but
No, a
yeah,
lot of people mentioned Nate Harriel's performance. They mentioned one of our followers on Twitter had said, I want to see Frankie Westfield in here tonight. I don't like Nate's one-on-one defending. I don't like his distributions, and it's kind of hard to argue with that tonight. I think overall the back line they had way too many turnovers. Right, well, a lot of sloppy passes. We saw very late in that match. Glessons just hands the ball right over, and I'm going to bring up Evan's point right here. Glessons looked out of place again. I think we do sometimes. I think when you're in the moment of an impressive season or a good squad, you kind of get lost that this is temporary. And I think the Union fans were so lucky to have the pairing of Jacob Glessens and Jack Elliott for what 4 or 5 years. I mean, really, arguably the best center back duo across the league, right? I think a lot of people can agree with that. And the drop off that we've seen now from the center back positions has been eye opening. Where this is probably the weakest our center backs have been in quite some time. Glessens looks like he's always a step behind. Macania has a couple promising moments, and then again shows that his
yeah.
inexperience.
Like
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
I was going to say about Macanya, like he's obviously very good on the ball. I mean, you saw there was that one moment. Um, I'm trying to explain. I think it was the moment where it sort of he did really well to bring the ball under control. You're thinking, all right, get rid of the ball, get rid of the ball, and
Mm-hmm.
then he tried. Then he had two players closing in. You're like, oh fuck, he's going to lose the ball, and it did incredibly to beat the one guy and then beat the other guy. Like, okay, excellent. Just play the 5 yard pass forward, and he just carried on running sideways. You're like, okay, play the ball, play the ball, play the ball, and you finally did. And you think, I think there's a player in there, but at the same time, there's definitely a calamitous mistake in there, which is going to hurt you.
Cole,
But
Cole
you get
mentions
that.
here. Sorry to cut you off, Dave. Cole mentions here. Glessens was dealing with a stomach bug, according to Carnell. Which I mean, I get it. We've all had those stomach issues. I don't think at that point you can start Pierre and Macania together. But here's a thought here, and this was flirted about last year. We saw this last season, which a lot of people were upset by that. We got rid of Damian Lowe, and then Nathan Harriel was that third center back. I think the Pierre project is probably not ready to go. It doesn't seem like they want to play him right now. Glavinovic is out for about what 8 weeks, I think, give or take, with a meniscus surgery that he just had. If Nathan Harriel is not your answer on the right hand side of the back line, and
Yeah,
a lot of people are saying, hey, Frankie Westfield seems like he fits the role, even though he's young and he'll have the same mistakes like Andrew Rick and have that maybe over aggression sometimes, which we saw earlier this season, where he actually gave up a goal because he, was overly aggressive in the box. Do you flirt the idea of putting Nathan Harriel at center back at this point to try something different? Go
um,
ahead. I mean, you can answer that question if you want.
but I think. I mean, again, he had stints there last year. He didn't look too bad, but I feel like perhaps it might. It's hard to assess, really. I think my biggest issue with this defense. I mean, the fact you've only got one left-footed defender of the club is a big issue. But I think I said to you guys, I'd look at moving Kai back to the heart of the pitch and having another left back.
You would put probably you would have to put Frankie Westfield at left back.
Left back, there you go. You put Westfield left back. I just think
Yeah,
it's just so overexposed on that left hand side defensively, where players have to shift over and you having players drop in sometimes. It's just sort of, and that was just such a big concern for me in that first half. It happened a couple of occasions in the second half, and the fact that Wagner was nowhere to be seen for the goal, and you think bust the gut to get back. Come on, like
yeah.
same for Glasnow's. Obviously, Glasnow's had the sickness bug, whatever. But um, yeah, I mean, again, obviously Harriet second half, I wouldn't mind it. Maybe if you played back five and where if you played Westfield as like the left side to centre half, maybe, and or Nate as the left side to centre half, where
Sure.
you can then give Kai the freedom to essentially play as a left winger, and then you know you can just if he does overcommit, you can just move out into a forward, and you've still got four defenders there, as opposed to like tonight and on occasion, other occasions this year and last year, where you have the four, and Kai's gone up the pitch and something's happened, been a turnover or transition of play.
Mhm.
Ball comes back the other side, then tap the ball down the left, and thinking, Where's your left back? And he's
Right.
20 yards behind the play, and thinking, what's going on? Like again, Kai Packers is a great defender. And I think as well when he is back there in those positions, he's a great defender. He gets stuck in, and that's what's so infuriating. You just think, get back and just fight, because he is a fighter. I don't know. Perhaps it's a tactical thing that you need to look at, but it's just it's too often an occurrence. And I think again, it really showed tonight and how easy that NYCFC got behind and they got down the
Mhm.
wings, and not just the left and right as well. They did get they did get a fair amount of joy down the right wings.
Yeah.
And mate, perhaps it's a time to have a look at, again. You've got all this money now from Gazdag. Perhaps
Well,
it's a time to have a look.
and that's the thing. So, and let's kind of talk about this, and we're going to segue into the offensive drought that we're currently seeing. So we get combined between McGlynn and Daniel Gazdag about what 6.5 million, right, total.
Yeah,
So fans are wondering, what is the next step then? Are they going to go out into this transfer window and bring in a player who's going to replace Daniel Gazdag's production, or is Vasilev just the automatic plug and play, and that's it? Now, if Vasilev is going to be your starting 10 at that point, that's fine. I don't mind Vasilev. I think a lot of us have enjoyed what he's shown so far this season. But the problem is the depth now on this bench is extremely thin, especially because you lost Glavinovic the same exact week that you decided to ship Daniel Gazdag out. So now you're losing really two players that were starting caliber players that are completely off your roster.
yeah,
And the problem we saw tonight was, and we'll get to the subs in a second, which I think the substitution was a hot topic issue as well. Baribo has gone cold. He is, as Frank B mentioned, where's Waldo? I mean Baribo, right? Where has he gone? But this offense as a whole has disappeared entirely.
yeah.
Now, we saw the transition of Damiani into the starting position over Michael Ua. I think Ua was dealing with an injury last week, if I remember correctly, from Jose and I talking on the previous show. And I don't mind Ua coming off the bench. I don't. I don't mind that option. But the problem is this offense has scored 0 goals last week, 0 goals this week. They had 1 goal at Miami, and then they only had 1 goal against St. Louis. Even against Nashville, they scored only 1 goal. We haven't scored more than 2 goals since March 8th against the Revolution. It's been 1-1-1-0-0. So the offensive output has gone south. I think you and I can both agree tonight too that Quinn Sullivan was probably your most dynamic player across the
Yeah.
board, and he didn't even finish the match. He was brought out. So what are you seeing from the offensive side of things? We talked the back line. Now let's talk about that frontal tackle.
I mean, again, they created chances. They had plenty of chances tonight to score. I mean, the amount of times they got the ball in the box and in good positions, and I think there was a couple of good chances in the first half where perhaps could have got a shot off a bit quicker, or they could have been a bit braver in how they went about, with having the chance as opposed to panicking or taking it wide. Like, I think that's why again, Miss Gazdag, who was a finisher, and to me tonight they looked toothless in attack. They looked toothless going forward. Like, just when they did get the ball in those positions, you just didn't really back them to do anything with it. You just thought, apart from the one cross from Kai in the second half, I think the keeper had much to do.
No,
I think and the one header as well. I think from like the edge of the box. I think it was Baribo
it
or
was Donovan with a nice
was it
header that
Donovan? That
made
was it.
Priest really dive one out.
That was Donovan. Yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
Donovan. Donovan, I think, probably had two chances in the second half. And you think, with all those shots, I think, 16, 17 shots the Union had overall? 16 shots. And only have three on target. Right. You at least think perhaps if one of those chances falls to Gazdag, he at least test the goalkeeper, or, right place, right time, which is what he basically built his career off in Philadelphia, was being there in the right place at the right time. And again, perhaps he didn't fit the system, but
well, so, I mean, you're talking about the shot attempts. I think this has been now a consistent trend, and I'll kind of bring up those two comments in a second. So the Philadelphia Union tonight, as you said, Dave, had 16 shot attempts. They had 3 shots on goal. Against Orlando, which we know was a 0-0 draw, we had 21 shot attempts, 4 shots on goal. I can even go back to, let's say, Miami game if you want to go see like what the trend has been. Against Miami, we had 19 shot attempts, six shots on goal. So to your point, they're getting chances. They're just not getting these things where it needs to go, whether it be testing the keeper or in the back of the net. Clearly, let me bring a couple comments right here. Evan mentions the options are very small. I'm sure most league transfers are closed. MLS opens until the 23rd. If they April 23rd, if they acquire anyone, it's probably an in the league trade, which I don't personally see the Union doing right now. But that's a big conversation that everybody's having at this point with what they're going to do to fix the Daniel Gazdag absence. Eric, hello Eric, always good to hear from you. Says sure glad we traded our best goal scorer. Better yet, have zero plans to make the team better. That's the Union organization I know and love. Colin says if our best chance is from Chris Donovan, that is a massive problem. And Evan says totally agree. And I think that's a bigger issue that we saw tonight on display as well as the substitutions. And I'll bring up the substitution list here in 1 second if you can bear with me, Dave. We had, oh, that's the NYC team. My apologies. We had Frankie Westfield came on for Macania. Uwa came on from Danley John Jocks. Bedoya came on for Quinn Sullivan. And Donovan came on for Damiani. What were your thoughts on the substitutions tonight?
Um, Westfield one was interesting. Ua, one thing I did like was the Ua one for Downley thing. It shows sort of a willingness to change the system, maybe. Um, we'll
It
try
looks like they
something a bit
shifted
different.
like a 4-1-4-1 according to
Yeah,
Higginbottom. Go ahead.
I don't mind it. I think it just shows a willingness to try something different. What you've seen is not working, making a tactical change as opposed to whenever there was you needed to go on the gym or things weren't going right in the gym instead of trying something different, going three strikers up front, or it was always like for like changes. It'd be centre mid for centre mid, striker for striker,
Mm-hmm.
right back for right back, defender for defender, whatever. You think we're 2-0 down with 25 minutes to go. Swapping a striker out for another striker is not going to do anything. You're still going to be in the exact same position you're in. Whatever. I think so. I did quite like that approach where
Yeah,
you know trying something different. I did quite like that, but I think the most glaring thing was just shows how weak the bench is more than anything. The lack of depth,
sure.
really, behind the starting team. You know, again, I guess perhaps it's a situation that the team was in, but obviously Bueno didn't get on the pitch. I mean, again, you've got obviously Mikel Owa, experienced, Bedoya, again, very experienced, but on the older side and at the back end of his career, Chris Donovan, uh, your fourth choice, fifth choice striker, and then you got defender in Westfield, and then you got a 15-year-old Raffanello, Neil Pierre, and a Bueno who can't even get in the squad half the time.
And,
It
and
shows
that
just
was
the lack of depth.
that's a thing that I mean. You look at the rest of the, as you said, the unused substitutions: Raffanello, Kevin Sullivan, Bueno, Semley, and Pierre. And somebody had mentioned us or commented to me on Twitter, like, why not put Sullivan at this point? He's at least a dynamic player. He's good on the ball.
Yeah,
Maybe he gets lucky out there. Yes, he's only 15-year-old, but he's obviously a very talented 15-year-old. What if he can spark something out of this team? Um, I do think this team has missed the fire that Jose Martinez has brought to this club for so many years.
yeah,
And that's personally one reason why I want to see Jesus Bueno. Just add some spark and energy into the midfield to
yeah,
maybe again. I don't think Bueno's success with the Union has been a fluke. Every time he saw the field last season, he either scored a goal or created some sort of magic. Obviously, we saw what he did in League's Cup. Was it now 2 years ago, right? When he got his that contract extension.
yeah.
We've seen him make these changes to the game. So I don't understand how even tonight Bedoya is the better option than Bueno. I just even from a speed standpoint, you have a faster player in Bueno.
Yeah.
Right now, this team needs to get going to score a goal, and you're just throwing out somebody who's older than me out there.
I mean,
Yeah, go ahead.
it's telling though, isn't it? When you look at the play. Okay, but obviously Mikel and Bedoya are good players, but you look at the difference in substitutions that they're bringing on in comparison to what the Union are bringing on. I mean, Chris Donovan's coming on, um, Bedoya. Who are you look at the subs they make? Julian Fernandez, who has played over 50 games in the Argentinian First Division,
Yep.
and then obviously Bakra, who has played international football for Algeria.
Hmm.
I think plays in the Croatian First Division, which again If you look at the difference in quality, perhaps an international footballer coming on, you've got no disrespect to Chris Donovan. Your best striking option at some stage is Chris Donovan. You're thinking, what's the depth? Um, I get that's something we discussed at the start of the season, but I think perhaps looking at this team, I sort of feel like the quick start really raised expectations too much for a team. There was
Well,
obviously growing pains. There was always going to be growing pains. I think perhaps expectations from the start of the season were perhaps raised much higher than everyone thought too quickly to the point where a lot of people are now frustrated that we're now seeing growing pains in a new system that the players perhaps aren't used to. Um, playing teams who approach the game differently, you're going to have to play the way that you press and approach the game yourselves differently, and we are going to see growing pains. We're going to see how this team reacts to different ways and how, different ways they need to play and counteract what the opposition do.
well, this is more of the team that we expected entering the year. I think you and I had talked about in one of our preseason shows. Like we have low expectations. I wasn't entirely sure this team would make the playoffs. I think what has also hurt this team, and Evan has a good point. I'm going to bring up in a second too. But I think one thing that has hurt this team is that they just haven't been healthy either. Glavinovic started the year unable to play. Now he gets hurt. Nathan Harriel was
Yeah,
hurt to start the year. Um, Ua has been dealing with an injury already. Kai Wagner has missed a couple of matches when he was visibly absent. His absence was noticeable in those two games because of how poor we played. Andre Blake's already missing time. I mean, Carnell had an uphill battle to start the season, and I'm not envious of him at all. But then when you throw in all these changes to your lineup, and every single week we're really not sure who's going to start, what we're going to see out of this back line. Is Glesson's going to be reliable or not? It's not been easy for Carnell, and now he's being given the same exact hand that Jim Curtin had. Here's a pretty solid first starting 11, and then you're going to have a bunch of Union 2 players on your bench, and you have to make the most of it as best as you possibly can.
yeah.
Evan brings up a point here. Anyone else think they were force feeding the ball to Quinn on the right side? A one trick pony. They always have a plan A and never a plan B. And I think, Dave, I'm going to ask you that part in a second, but I noticed that right away. I think the first half hour, so I was like, okay, go to Quinn, go to Quinn, go to Quinn, go to Quinn. And I get it. He is right now your arguably your best attacking player, but it's predictable. And his crosses, although have sometimes been great, we've also agreed on this show that he's not always the most reliable with distribution into the box. But I think the lack of plan B is something that you have said a lot. Do you agree with Evan's decision there? There's really no or statement. There's really no plan B right now for this roster.
Um, I think it's the exact same issues as last year, and the year before that, 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 and the year before that. It was under Jim Curtin. It was get the ball out wide to the fullbacks and expect a good delivery, and that was always the way. It was always never played the ball through the middle of the park, never try something different. It was always get the ball wide, crosses in the box,
Yep.
and always fullbacks with the width. Am I surprised they went for Solomon a lot? No, because I think again we've discussed how again he's by far one of the better players in the team, more creative players, better on the ball. Um, for Indiana Vasiljev, is he really? They're not really tens. They're more wingers, aren't they? They're more like wide attacking midfielders.
That's how it's been so far.
As he as and you look at Vasiljev before he came in, he's much more of a central player. Has Vasiljev got the pace? Has he got the skill, technical ability, skill whatever, and pace to get the ball past the fullback and get across in the box, or you know really drive at a fullback and take him on and cut inside and again he technically in the middle he's looked solid when he's come in, but out wide's a different story. And I think Quinn's obviously athletically. Well, I think we mentioned it at the start of the season. Like you see that Quinn's obviously bulked up this off season. He's looking in
He does. He looks good.
great shape, great form.
Evan mentions plan A so far this season has been to use Kai down the wings, and we saw when Kai wasn't there, this team just lacked a lot of
Yeah,
versatility and approach in the offensive attack. I'm really just this is a weird comparison, Dave, and I know you're an Eagles fan. For people who don't know, Dave is a huge Eagles fan as well, not just Union. Um, doesn't
it
this
is.
kind of remind you of the Chip Kelly era when he got rid of Macklin and Deshaun Jackson and Shady McCoy. Like it feels like we are getting rid of these really talented players because they don't fit a particular system or whatever.
The
But there's
players make
there's but there's no real upgrade in the roster that's assembled behind those changes, and
no.
that's kind of how I feel now. I feel very frustrated with every single thing. Like I don't have a problem with McGlynn going to Houston. I don't. I feel like that was the smart move. But this one with Daniel stings the most because this team is noticeably worse on paper now and on the field. I don't know if you like that comparison or not.
Yeah, I sort of do. I think you're spot on. To be fair, I think I was thinking earlier, just in the case of I don't know what coach said it. I mean, a couple of coaches have said that, like they've come into a place, they haven't even bothered to look at the players they've got because they're going in with the mindset of I'm going to do my system and they're going to play my system. And a couple of managers have looked at it and gone, these players don't fit the system. These are
Yeah,
really good players. I need to play the way that I need to play a system that fits the players, and they've adapted a system that fits the players. And teams have kicked on. I think what team it is. Might be
Valerie
a
had.
couple of.
Go ahead, Dave. No, go ahead.
I'm trying to think a couple of teams in like the lower leagues of England. I'm trying to think. I can't think of the Irish carry on, but yeah, it's just a case of the players make the system, the fit that you adapt your system to accommodate the players you've got, especially your better players. Not, I mean,
You fit the system around the players, not the players around
yeah,
the system. See,
yeah,
that's the thing. So Valerie and I were texting during the match, and she had to go at the 65th minute. She was like, "Will my absence bring the team any luck?" Sorry, Val. It actually looked probably worse after you left. So, but this kind of reminds me, and again, for those who know me well enough, I'm a big basketball guy. In basketball, when it comes to the NBA draft, you draft the best possible player. You don't draft based on what you need necessarily. You typically draft the best available player. So if it's Victor Wembanyama as your number one overall pick, it doesn't matter if you have a center. You pick that guy because he's a unicorn, and you find a way to fit him into the basketball system that you have in place, or build it around him. That's how I would like to approach this team as well. And I get soccer and basketball are different. They're also very similar in terms of spacing and passing and all that stuff. Um, but I'm just sick of this, as Eric says, kind of ownership and the way there is no desire to win right now. I don't know if there will be a desire to win in the foreseeable future. This is very much a business move. I know Mike Thomas, who's somebody on Twitter and a Union fan, mentioned like 2025 Union banner, a good business decision. That's basically what this team is coming down to every single season. How many great business decisions can we make, and how much money can we make Jay Sugarman, regardless of the product on the field? And it's hard. It's hard to root for that team, man. I don't know if you feel the same. I mean, you're obviously more knowledgeable of soccer than I am, but it it's hard for a fan base to get behind that approach, especially in a major market.
100%. I think when you see again, you see the teams around you in the league signing all these great players. Like obviously, Atlanta United bring back Miguel Almiron, and all these other clubs making such great big moves. You're thinking, especially the way, not last season, but the years before, and the way that Union went on those CCL runs, and went on those playoff runs, and was so close to not winning the MLS Cup, getting to the conference finals. You're thinking that's the platform of where you need to build, and then you look at the way I mean, you look at the first Eastern Conference final. You could probably excuse that for the COVID issue. That
Yep.
was his own thing. But you look at I don't want to bring it up. You look at the final of the MLS Cup final. You look at the other times Union been knocked up by teams in the playoffs. You think, look at the players and look at the teams they've gone on to win the MLS Cup, and look at the depth and look at the players they've got. Oh, they at least have some very good quality players. And I'm not saying Union don't, but they have standout players. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
These teams have standout players that you look at and go, that guy's the face of the MLS. Like Chucho Hernandez, and obviously into Miami you got Messi and whatever, Suarez, whatever. That's their own ket of fish. But Atlanta United, when they bring back Miguel Almiron, having Thiago Almada, like all these teams, do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? It's just sort of this.
Yeah.
I felt like that was been the next logical step for the team to go. Okay, we need to go out and get that big superstar. You look at LAFC in the MLS Cup final. Bring Baird off the bench, immediate impact, causing any issues.
Well, that
Then
was
goes and then
go ahead. Go ahead.
comes
Mhm.
up with the big moment in the biggest moment in the game, scores a massive header to win the game for them. And again, the Union that year had Julio Carranza, who obviously I guess you could argue was that player for the Union,
Mhm.
but again they've not really replaced him. I mean, you could say they replaced him with Damiani or whatever, but like again, that's an unproven talent at the time you don't know what you're going to get. Yeah,
Eric mentions here, it doesn't fly. I'm halfway out the door right now. I won't stand to be a feeder team. I want to win. Sell the team. Um, Dan joins us. Not good, y'all. Not good. Frankie says definitely hard to get behind the team. Excuse me. Losing a fire sale. Having a fire sale, excuse me. It's hard for fans to trust ownership. As for some of you who noticed, I'm wearing my demand beggar better Sugarman out t-shirt because it just felt appropriate for this show because I'm kind of really agitated with this club as a whole. But you mentioned the Columbus Crew, and I know Evan mentions the May 10th against the Crew is gonna be a wild game, but they they move on to this season without Cucho Hernandez. So what do? They find a replacement who is the all-time leading goal scorer for his franchise. And if you read the article on the Columbus Dispatch from Brianna McKay, Jose Nunez had actually shared it out earlier today regarding her article. They were actually surprised they got him for that low. They were expecting to have to pay more money, but they went with a 4.5, and they probably feel like they made a better business decision than the Union did
yeah.
because not only are they adding in somebody on with at a good price, but somebody who's has a proven track record in MLS that he can score goals and facilitate and make an impact offensively when he's playing at his highest level. So they did exactly what we want them to do, what the Union should do, and what we want them to do. But we don't have any faith that's going to happen, not at least this year. And then you
I think
see,
that's
go ahead, Dave.
so. I think that's telling itself when you sort of say that Columbus was so shocked they got you know got him for that little. The fact they were perhaps willing to spend more money on to buy him, and does that perhaps show where the Union perhaps rank in terms of the other teams in this league in terms of mentality, where they perhaps even undervalue their own players to the point that they're willing to cut themselves short in the market or undercut themselves in the market, take less money. Whereas perhaps in other years, like you look at other clubs and the amount of money they bring in for players. Yeah, I don't know. Like, obviously, Carranza went for like $2.5 million,
Mm-hmm.
and I know he had a year left in his deal, but still, like you surely can command a greater fee for a player like Julian Carranza than $2.5 million. Surely, or was it a case of being? Or was it a case of wanting to rush the deal? Like, oh, this is the value of our asset. If we don't get this deal done at the first attempt, we may not got another deal, so we have to get rid of him now. And it's just a case of accepting what you can get and then moving on.
Regardless, you flipped such a very small investment into a very profitable outcome. So Julian Carranza was one that I think fans and ownership were happy about because of how much they spent to get him compared to how
Oh
much.
yeah, but he's going to a Champions League club. He's going to a club that is no disrespect to Columbus Crew, 10 times the size of Columbus Crew. And how often do you see it? How often do you see it when players have a year left in their deal, and they go to other clubs for 10, 15, 20 million pounds, dollars, whatever?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that Carranza's on that level, but $2.5 million, $2 million, whatever it was. I was shocked when I saw the fee he went for. Like, he was your star player, and look, he's starting in the champion. He's starting in the Champions League for final, the knockout games,
And listen,
and
go ahead.
that's what you're getting for it. Are the union? Do the union have a completely different view on the market in comparison to all these other clubs? And I think just the fact that Columbus Crew was so shocked that they one got him for so little, and two, from the sounds, of it, were willing to pay much more for Gazdag, who again technically only has a year left on his deal.
Yeah, club option. Yep.
We have the club option, but he only has a year. Technically, put it in like
Oh yeah,
brackets,
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
put it in quotation, has a year left in his deal. And the fact Columbus Crew were willing to pay more, well, let's say after the fact they were shocked by the price, of they they're willing to pay more to get the man. So I'm not sure perhaps the union's lack of knowledge or understanding of the market as a perhaps as a club that's one is trying to compete, or just mentality wise they haven't got the mentality of a club that wants to compete and sees themselves on that top branch, on that top level with these other clubs.
Well, I mean, so Janice says, "What are we doing with all the money?" I mean, I think that's a great question. You can look in the parking lots of Super Park and see the new fields and all that infrastructure being built, and you think that's where the money's going to Union Yards, where the money's going to that. Um, but we want to see that on the field, not just on the outside of Super Park. Kyle mentions, agreed, I'm fine with being a selling team and league, but there are levels to being a selling team. We definitely feel closer to Southampton than PSV. And also, like, again, you're in a major market. And that was one thing that Todd Lewis from the Free Kick Pod, I'm sure you all follow him as well. He really voiced that last year a lot. He said, "Look at Columbus. They have a couple really really good players, and then they've surrounded them with former college athletes and just these really solid players in the right positions with Nancy as a very reliable and winning coach as well to kind of be the cherry on top. How is Columbus attracting these players, but the Philadelphia market cannot? I think that is what it drives all of us so nuts as well, is that we are used to our teams spending money and going out and trying to win championships as much as possible.
in
Whether
other
it be
sports. Yeah,
Phillies, I mean, the Flyers have been a hot mess for years, but as we knew throughout the '90s and through 2000s, they would spend the money and go out and get players like Yager or Roenick or whoever else and try to win. The Sixers, that they're a separate dumpster fire. I don't feel like talking about right
no, they
now,
spend the money. They
but
still spend the money.
they have made attempts, very poor attempts, but they've made attempts. The Eagles, without goes without saying. The Phillies are a competitive team every year. The Union are just so stuck in this way, despite where they are located, and that's what I think bothers me the most. Is that the resources are there, they just don't want to do it. Dances as a comp, at least Brentford, admittedly a feeder club, is highly competitive and punches above their weight. Both can be true. Exactly. You can have both. So,
I
I
think
mean,
it's the
yeah, go
point
ahead.
of understanding the market and actually valuing what players are worth to you. Like again, it's good comparing us to these clubs in the Premier League, but these clubs in the Premier League know where they value themselves at. So again,
Yeah.
they're selling players. Like Southampton's selling players. They've been doing it for the last 10, 12 years. But they've been making sure that when they sell their best players, they get the right amount of money that they know they can reinvest it in the right category in the right place. Like Crystal Palace, people have in that same place. They made 60, 50, 60, 70 million from Michael Olise. Like, and the same for Brentford. Brentford, when they've sold players like Tony, got like 30 odd million or whatever it was for Ivan Tony. Like, a good fee for Ollie Watkins. Like Southampton got great fees for players they've moved on. Like, well, yeah, that one's got high.
I'll bring up Eric's comment. Go ahead, finish your thought, and I'll bring up
Do you know what
Eric's
I mean? It's
comment.
just, but they make sure that if they're going to let a player go, you let him go for the right fee. And it again, it just for me, it just feels like it's making sure that you get rid of or move the player on for when you feel like you made enough money, or actually instead of actually maximising the potential value for the club. Like again, you look at McAllen went for like 20 million to Southampton, no, to Newcastle. Sorry, when he left, he went for $20 million or whatever it was, or £20 million. Like that's for a guy with no real experience outside North America, and he's going for 20 million from the MLS to the Premier League. That's
Yeah,
I think it was 8 years ago, 7 years ago, 20 million. And then you look now, the Union is sending a player to a Champions League club for $2.5 million, which is probably 2.1. Well, that was going on in the stock market at this point, or whatever's going on with the currency exchange, or whatever. But like probably for around $2 million, £2 million, €2 million.
yeah.
Peanuts for a striker that caliber.
Eric mentions no one wants to go to Ohio, which is true. A lot of people in the states, Dave, do not like Ohio. That tells you how inept our ownership is. They don't know sports, let alone soccer, and money rules all. Winning isn't even on the list of priorities. That's why Columbus gets what we don't. Again, these are all great points. I love the venting session that our commenters bring to the table every single week. This team constantly feels like a team that is a what could have been type of squad. What could have been if Mark McKenzie stayed a little bit longer? What could have been if Carranza played with Baribo up top last year? What could have been if Martinez has stayed? What could have? I mean, I can go on. Paxton Aronson, Brendan Aronson. We can go on and on and on with how we get this great foundation. Again, Michael Thomas on Twitter, he mentioned like this team is really good at creating foundations, and a really strong squad, they don't ever get to the next step of adding to that foundation to become a contender. They're just hoping that this is the year that we catch lightning in a bottle again. And what we saw in 2022 was exactly that. It was lightning in a bottle. Every single player had a career year at every single point of that season. And you can say it was the same thing with the 2017 Philadelphia Eagles. I know they won a Super Bowl, but let's face it, they called lightning in the bottle at the very right time. And you just can't win championships hoping that this is your year. You have to create your own luck in any sport, whether it's baseball, soccer, anything else in between. Um, Valerie says, I've also said that Columbus, Ohio does not deserve to have that good of a team. And, I think everybody is in agreement with that. We have, we're 46 minutes in now, Dave. So let's talk a little bit about the upcoming games for the Philadelphia Union. We have Atlanta at home on Saturday the 19th. They just lost today at home against the Revolution. And then afterwards, we host DC United. They have just lost, was that one, two, three, 4 games in a row? That's Saturday 26th. And then after that, we travel to Montreal, where we've seen our struggles before. So you have 2 games coming up at home. What are you looking at right now? What is the mindset of this team entering these next 2 games? Are these must-win games for this club?
Uh, I think you're at a stage of the season where, with the amount of bloody places there are, I don't think it's panic buttons yet. If they, I say, draw both games, or whatever, or win one, lose one, like it. Again, I think we said at the start of the season that we weren't expecting too much, but again, you're at a stage of the season where there's so much time left,
Yeah.
where you got time to recover it, and I think they had one of the better starts of the season. Would it be a bit concerning? One win potentially in 6 or 7 games, or 2 wins in 7. I think yeah, be a reason for concern, but again, back at home, hopefully Andre Blake fit. Hopefully they have a replacement for Gazdag, at least by the DC United game, maybe. Yeah, I think that's just about as far as I go with him. I think it's a tough one to really assess because, again, I think it depends what happens in the games as well. I think if it sort of looks like this week and the LA Galaxy game and they lose to Atlanta United, perhaps. Yes, if we're looking at no, like the Atlanta United game, they're going to be a tough game. They're going to turn up, and I mean,
Well,
look at their
especially
squad, man.
after
That's a ridiculous squad.
especially after a loss. So I actually caught the first half of that game because it was on TV, and I was just like bored. And Atlanta had actually scored first, but it was called back because one of the other players was offside. And it was I feel like it was a bit controversial. I think even the commenters mentioned you could go either way on that decision. And they're at home. And then I mean like probably like 5 minutes later, Carl Skeel gets knocked down in the box. He kind of like forces that to happen, and then the Revolution go up 1-0 off a PK. And like if I'm them, I'm leaving that match agitated because their season has not gotten off to a good start. Currently, they're in tenth place in the Eastern Conference, and then you have that loss at home, which can't feel good ever. So they're going to come in here with a bit of that edge to kind of get back on track, to get their season kind of back on track here. So I'm always afraid of Atlanta. As you mentioned, Dave, they have a good squad. Their players are of a different caliber than the Philadelphia Unions. But for me, I mean, I'm going back to what we've discussed earlier this season, which is Super Park has to be a fortress. If even if this team is not a great team by the end of the year, we have to be able to have some sort of consistency at home, right? We saw last year they were like road warriors. Every time they went away from Super Park, they were just a better squad. That mindset has to change here. It has to change at home. And
Yeah,
if you want to look at Carnell, his future with the Philadelphia Union, anytime you have a rebuild or anything like that, you have to find certain things to build on for the next season. One of those things that I want to build on for next season, 2026, is let's make Chester a difficult place to play again, where even if a team gets a road draw, it's going to be a hard fought battle to get that road draw. So for me, am I saying on April 19th of a very long season, this is a must win game? No, but
no,
this is pretty close to let's start this process now of getting back on track because we've seen it. This team is talented enough to do at least that for now. I want to bring up some comments here as well. Dan says, "What am I looking for? Same lineups, same tactics. May as well have kept Jim. We'll see if Carnell was the right change there, Dan, for sure. I feel like the Union team needs to watch Major League. The ownership is no different than our ownership. Spite them and win despite ownership, screwing them left and right." Eric says, "I'll buy back in if this team is openly spitting in ownership." And then Valor says, "But Atlanta's an example of a club spending a lot of money and not getting results." And that's true too. I mean, we saw that with Toronto a bit. You sign some big name players and you spend a lot of money, you don't always win. And you can even argue with the Yankees, right? The Yankees have been known for spending big money, but up until last season, they had really gone through a long drought without any sort of playoff success. So, yes, spending money isn't always the answer. You're absolutely right. But my God, eventually you have to spend some money. So, Dave, any other thoughts on the upcoming game or anything, last thoughts you want to have on this match, right? We really didn't talk
Mm,
about it too much because
I
of
think
everything else going on.
I think obviously this is probably the first time they've really faced adversity. This team, I think, obviously they got beat. Yeah, their first defeat of the season, they bounced back and won. Okay, good result, and
Yep,
perhaps a stronger mentality than what we have seen in other years. I mean, good start to the season. Beat St. Louis, no, who were unbeaten previously at times. You think, okay,
yep,
good win. Lost into Miami 2-1, where again, I mean, you're hoping you probably could have got something better as a result. And looking at the game, you battered Miami. Don't know how they didn't score more than one goal. Um, Again, I think it'd be a good barometer to see where perhaps this team is mentally or mentality wise, and what perhaps we can expect going forward. Because if you know, I mean, Union could bounce back and grab a result in this game, but I think again, it just feels like it's a work in progress. It's growing pains, teeth and pains for this team, and it might take some time for them to adjust. So obviously, you have a set style of play, but perhaps you do need to make those tactical tweaks to adjust to how you play certain teams and how the other teams play in the game. Like,
you want to avoid becoming predictable. I think is
yeah,
kind of what you're going for, and I
yeah,
agree. I think Evan mentioned it, or one of our commenters mentioned it. It was obvious what the Union were doing tonight. Just find Quinn Sullivan and see what he can do. And to your point, Dave, he's kind of going out wider than maybe we would like him to, and
yeah,
that was kind of the plan tonight. So let's try to find ways. If you're going to be a pressing team, that's fine, but you have to find ways to then get creative and maybe a lineup change. Maybe you go three up top. I don't know what the answer is because yes, it was. I think one of the things we highlighted last week. Yet you shut out Orlando tonight. I'd argue you got lucky that it wasn't 2-0, but you were an Andrew Rick mental error away from also possibly posting a shutout. There is some
yeah.
silver lining there, but the offense has to get going. Go ahead. Yeah.
I just think with the goal, I think Andrew Ricketts one of those things as a goalkeeper where you're coming off your line, you either have to commit or stay and try and close the angle down or force make yourself big and obviously he chose the more aggressive option. Perhaps that's again I think that's just where it comes with an 18/19-year-old goalkeeper where you go for the aggressive, perhaps you're a bit more aggressive and a bit more uh yeah, probably aggressive is the right words, and
Hmm.
to try be the hero, perhaps make the big play, close it down, get the ball. You think you're going to beat into it, but it's one of those things, isn't it? Hopefully, Andre Blake's back. I think that's a big one. If you can get Andre Blake back, um, if you, I think it's a game. It's a game changer. It's as we said tonight. It's the difference between losing 1-0 probably and drawing 0-0. And I know on the, I know it doesn't look like the greatest thing, almost, or the sexiest thing going forward, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm trying the word. But again, that's the difference having an experienced goalkeeper,
Hmm.
and again, then you can sort of build up. And I think again, you look at the players that Atlanta do possess. Emil Lath is a player that, coming from English football, I've known quite well. His goal scoring record at Middlesbrough was really good.
Hmm.
Uh, and again, another player they brought in would have brought in for a good fee. So I'm interested to see how the Union actually deal with, shutting down or trying to stop him, especially after what's the word? How they performed tonight, perhaps
Sure.
against possibly. lesser opposition maybe in terms of the threat going forward in comparison to what Atlanta may provide.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, like I said, I do think these next two games are must wins. And I'm looking at this schedule in May. I didn't really look ahead too much, but now that I'm looking at the May calendar, it's a really tough stretch, and I didn't notice it till just now. So after we host Atlanta and DC United, we have to travel to Montreal. We host Columbus, which we all are very excited about for obvious reasons. We host the LA Galaxy, which of course another tough opponent. We travel to Atlanta, which is a tough place to play, and then we host Miami, travel to Toronto, travel to Dallas. With this current roster in place and the way they've been playing these last two games, we have one, two, three, four, five, six, 7 games. I don't know if we win even two of those the way we're playing right now.
Yeah,
So I mean, again, I have still have low expectations for this season, and we'll wrap up the show in a second. But if you want to save this season, you can't enter May on a 3 game losing streak or only getting 1 point, in the last 3 games or whatever negative scenario you want to think about. That schedule in May is tough. That is a tough gauntlet of games, especially with all the traveling in between, and the last two being Toronto and Dallas. Not easy places to travel to and play. So I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but I'm not exactly optimistic. Um, but tonight, Philadelphia Union fall 1-0 in City Field and Queens against NYCFC. Next week we play against Atlanta on the 19th at 7:30 p.m. I will likely be here for the post game show as well. Dave, hopefully you can join me again. If not, we'll try to find some other people to join the show. In the meantime, if you're looking for some new merch, we have the Across the Pitch merch. Our boy Johnny Elek has put together these cool designs: t-shirts, mugs, cups, sweaters, reasonably priced. If you guys are interested, please send me a DM. Jose as well, Dave. You can send us a DM. We'll hook you up, and it's really cheap. I think that the cups are like $10. It's not too bad compared to the Philadelphia Union gear, which is crazy. Besides that, this is Across the Pitch. Again, thank you for joining us. It's Dave GFC Miller on Twitter, myself, Mike Barrera, M Barrera 1323 on Twitter. On Facebook, I'm Miguel Reyes, as you guys know. And that's our show tonight. Have a good night, everybody. Dave, have a good one.
Doop.
Doop.